not taking, this is our time. Just breathe, this will be a hard fight. The truth cash out in the night.
All right, folks, welcome to Sasquatch Unredacted. I am Johnny Two Bears. Richard Farabee is on with us right now. He's having some technical difficulties with his microphone. So he's going to get all that worked out. He is somewhere else. He's actually using Starlink, which is pretty interesting. He says it's working really good. We just got to I have a feeling that his webcam mic is turned on at the same time. So he'll get that fixed. But until then, we're going to be interviewing Joy. Now, Joy is she's a Georgia native. I've talked to her before. She's done a couple podcasts before. She'll tell you all about that. I've actually gone to her property because she does not live that far away from me, and kind of check the area out after the stories that she's going to be telling you guys. And it's definitely the area she lives in. I can understand why she would have activity and have the things that she's had happen on her property. But we're gonna go ahead and Richard, if you can hear me, bud. And that's the greatest part about all this is Richard's having to run the podcast as he's doing this. But Richard, go ahead and bring Joy on for us.
Hey, Johnny.
Joy, how are you?
I'm all right, and you?
Good, good. What you been up to lately?
Oh, work, work, and
Work.
more work. That's
Yeah.
about it. Yep.
Now before we get into everything, I want you to tell everybody. Don't tell them exactly where it is, but give everybody a general area, general idea of where you live at.
Northwest Georgia, not too far from Alabama.
Right. So west-ish Georgia, I guess.
Yes, yes. Very westish.
Right. Now, I kind of, I don't want to jump ahead because I know your story, but I will ask this. Did you ever have any other experiences or know much about Sasquatch at all before you had the events happen on your property?
I, like everybody else, had seen In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, grew up on sci-fi and the typical, like everybody else here on every other podcast. It's like, yeah, I thought they were all in there was one and it was in, like Washington or California or something. Uh,
Right.
but it's, that was all it was. And where I grew up, there's a story of the Crumpton Booger, which in hindsight, I kind of think that was a white dog man from what, you know, my granny had said. And there's Ann River Siddons did a interview with Atlanta Magazine. You can Google it, and it asks about her favorite myth or legend, and she talks about the Crumpton Booger. And I don't know if it was her dad or who it was, but there's some articles that I found online talking about the Crumpton Booger and describing it. And the way they describe it, it kind of, makes me think that it possibly could have been a dog man. And even from
Really?
yeah, and from what my uh, great uncle and some of my cousins, and of course, I grew up in rural, very rural, when South Fulton was much of nothing but farms and, people like we are now living in the woods. Uh, but
Right.
yeah, there's all sorts of stories from that. So I was kind of familiar, even though I didn't know that this could have possibly been Sasquatch or a dog man.
Right. Now, where is Crumpton?
Well, it was actually uh, the family was Compton, and they had a farm, a cat had
Okay.
cattle. Yeah, but the Crumpton was where what everybody called it. I don't know if it was just the
Just a nickname.
over. Yeah, just over the years it got changed or whatever. But if you go back and talk to people, it said the family was actually Compton. Uh,
Huh.
And my granny, the way she described it, which I don't know, I mean, my granny's been dead for a long time now. the way she described it was she said it was a white dog that would sit out in the field with the Crumpton's cattle. And the way my cousin says her grandpa, which of course was my granny's brother, described it is, looks like the face of a calf and about the size of a yearling calf. So, if you know anything about cattle, it's not huge, but it kind of, to me, kind of is like the size of a dog man would be. But
Right.
I personally never saw it. My dad said he never saw it, but there's a story that one of my uncles told about uh, my dad's brother and one of his buddies walking home from school one evening after a function, and they could hear something that sounded like it was pacing them in the woods, and it made them really nervous. So, like I said, it could have been a
Hmm.
dog man, no telling. But yeah, I grew up with all these booger stories, too.
Right. Well, Richard's back up. Come on, Richard. Let's test that thing out. Go ahead and unmute yourself. All right. Let's see.
I don't know anything else to do what I'm doing already. So,
All right.
like I said, you guys sound great. I don't know
Hold
where.
on one. Let's see. Let's see. Testing. Dude, I don't hear it anymore.
I don't either.
Okay, because
It's
I didn't.
magic. Welcome to the show,
Yay!
Richard Farabee.
Yeah, I didn't really do anything.
Well, baby Jesus did it for us.
Yep.
Okay. So
Yeah,
good,
I,
good
I
to
only
go.
took I only took computer ebonics.
All right. Well, anyway, I'm sure you were listening to Joy's introduction. Now, Joy, you want to go into everything that happened around your property, things you experienced?
Okay, I'll start where my first realization that there was something around here. In December of 21, a friend of mine, I guess they had been into, all the, what is it, Bigfoot expedition or whatever the TV show is. I mean, out here in the middle of nowhere, we've never had cable. Of course, I don't know. Johnny probably lives in a better area than we do. But gosh, I lose my train of thought. But anyway, so and he was anyway, the person that asked me said, "Do you believe in Bigfoot?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, the possibility, uh, sure, up in, the great northwest of the US uh and I said, "Sure, I'm open to anything." And I work nights. So I, to kill time at night, watch a camera mostly at night. Uh so and I listen to podcasts. And so I just, Googled Bigfoot and, up pops, Wes, which I think he's like, the beginning of all things Sasquatch for its podcasts go. Started listening to that. And of course they have the intro, the whoops and that sort of thing. And I was like, oh cool, because I grew up listening to booger stories and I love horror movies, not the gore, but just horror things, all things scary. And so I was listening to this and I just started binging it. And, he's been on for years now. And so lots and lots of stuff to catch up on. And I would go in and out of the house at night and just playing the thing, intro, everything playing. And I guess I'd been listening to it probably not, I guess probably about 2 weeks, I guess. And got in my truck, pulled out of the carport, just my usual stuff, listen to the podcast, pull out the end of my driveway, look both ways, and we live in the woods. I mean, totally, completely in the woods. There's no street lights out here, on the road where I live, nothing. So at the end of my driveway, I stop and I look across the road and there's, red eyes. And I'm thinking, oh, I wonder what that is, an owl or something. I'd never seen something. And I was thinking eye shine and, just kind of like this, whatever, another one of the wildlife, because you have to watch out around here when you, especially when you drive at night, deer especially. And as I pulled out, turned right, and as I'm going along, something in the back of my mind just said, look. And I looked to my left, and I mean, literally in my face, I mean, less than a foot away from me, eyeball to eyeball. I mean, I can't say because I couldn't see a face. All I could see was eyes because it was pitch black that night. and this is January 25th. This is when of 22. Um, and these eyes were looking in the window at me, and I'm doing, I don't know, 30ish maybe in my truck, headed down the road, and I'm, got my head caught looking out my window and looking this thing dead in the eye, and the mind speak thing. It's like I believe in it, telepathy, that kind of thing, because the oldest daughter of the oldest daughter of the oldest daughter thing. I had like a connection with my grandma. It's like I could be thinking about her, you know. But anyway, so this thing's looking at me, and I'm looking at it, and it kind of looks at, the way its head's cocked at me. And it was like, who are you? And I just, thought right back at it. It's like, who are you? And I'm like, oh crap, I got to get to work. So anyway, so I start heading down the road. But to
So
describe these,
hold on before you get too far. So you're saying that you actually heard that in your head,
yes, I mean not audibly, but it's like a thought. It's it's not like audible, not like something you hear,
but it
with your
is what you
ears.
consider mind speak, is what you're saying,
Yeah, telepathy.
pretty
Yeah,
much. These weren't
yeah,
your own thoughts.
yes. This it's like I don't know. It could have been my own thoughts. I can't say one way or the other to be honest with you. But you know how you can look at your cat or your dog, and how do they look at you, and they're just you can look in their eyes and kind of tell what they want from you. It's kind of like what this was. So I don't know if it was actually telepathy or if it was just us reading each other's eyes. They say the eyes are the window to the soul. So, um, but anyway, to describe the eyes, they're about 8 inches apart and probably about as big around as a golf ball, far as the surface of the eyes. But they're just like human eyes, only bigger. Okay, and the cornea is what was red. You could see the iris and the whites of the eyes behind it. You couldn't tell what the color was because the whole, like I said, like the cornea across it was kind of a not red, but somebody had described it once about like if you put a flashlight under your finger and that color that comes through your finger, it was sort of like that, a little more pinkish than that, not quite as red, but it was surreal, and that was kind of my thing. It's like after I saw it, it was, like I said, just the eyes I didn't see, but it was like I have a Toyota Sequoia. So, you can imagine how high it was. And it was almost like it was bent over just from the angle the eyes were looking at me. And it was keeping up with my truck. I mean, it's like I heard no noise, no footsteps, it made no vocalizations or anything. Anyway, so I go on down the road, I go to work, and I was, my mind, it's like, okay, it didn't seem real. I mean, I know it was real. I'm not crazy. I don't drink. I don't smoke anything. I'm a God fearing person. And it was, I'm sorry, what?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I lost the
Um,
chat. So I'm trying to pull up a chat.
oh, okay. So, um, where was I? Oh, surreal. Uh, so yeah, it's like trying to, take what I actually saw and assign it to something. And, because like I said, I know I'm not crazy, but it's just like, what the heck just happened? Because I mean, it was exactly like something you would see in a horror movie. I mean,
But
these red,
there's no other, you didn't see a face, you didn't
there
see
was
the
no
upper
face,
body.
nothing. It was nothing but the eyes. I mean, it was because, I mean, like I said, it was pitch black. And of course, I'll get to it later about the black one that I actually saw full on kind of thing. But that's the only thing I can think of, in hindsight, is that the thing was the color of the night. Because anyway, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Uh, so anyway, so I get to work and I'm just, kind of processing this. My coworkers go home. I'm there at night by myself, and I was just thinking about this, listening to the podcast, and because I thought Sasquatch, in the process of it, trying to justify everything, and of course kept listening to the podcast, this, that, and the other. Well, I don't know, like the timeline. It's like I don't know if it was a few weeks, few days, whatever, because this went on, the whole year pretty much off and on. Uh, a few nights or a couple of weeks later, I was headed to work, and of course I'm like on edge, not scared or anything, but just looking for these things, just like I would look for any other wildlife. And I looked over same patch of woods where this thing came from, only further up the road. I see this thing with the red eyes. It's like you couldn't see the tree because, like I said, it's dark out here. There's no street lights or anything. You could see the red eyes over there glowing, and down lower, like it was on the other side of the tree, there was five other sets of eyes, the kind of the yellowish green or greenish yellow eyes with it. And in hindsight, I look back and it's like, okay, this thing, it's like, between me and this first thing, it's like, who are you? And it's almost like this thing was trying to show me who it was. I'm not sure the intentions behind what it was. And, this is all conjecture. Nobody knows anything about these things. I'm just going by what I've seen and what I think and feel about these things. Uh, but it's almost like they were watching me and letting me know that they were there watching me. Well, then another few days, few weeks later, uh, I'm going up the road, and there's a road that kind of cuts off to the left. And you know how at night you'll kind of like you can see a silhouette or something kind of walking up the road. I don't know if it was, I don't think it was a person because there was no flashlight or anything else. This one, I'm kind of like, I kind of put it to the side because I'm not sure if this was one, but it was something big and bipedal walking up the road. And I could just see the silhouette of it. And it was probably, I don't know, 80 yards away from where I was. And all I could see was a silhouette walking. And then a few days, few weeks later, get a little further up the road, and there's one sitting over kind of on a hill in the woods, and it was one of the ones with the greenish yellow eyes. And then a few days, weeks later, whatever, further up the road, it's almost like on my route to work, there was one that was standing over in the pasture. I did not see this one's face, but it looked to be about 7.5 feet tall. And this whole thing, even to me, it's still surreal in my mind that these things actually exist. But it was standing. It was a gray one, and it's the same color as like poplar tree bark. Kind of a lighter, kind of grayish, dark grayish. It's an amalgamation of different shades of gray, and it was standing over in the pasture, and it's like a limbless tree with the top cut out of it. It's like the shape of it. It's one of the ones people have described as the basketball player shapes. Anyway, and it stood there still. It's like if you didn't know that there wasn't a tree there, you would have thought it was a old tree trunk standing there. Anyway, again, a few days, several weeks later, uh, I'm going down the mountain, and I get sort of toward the bottom, and this is like, I don't know, these things get more surreal as the whole thing goes on. I get down toward the bottom, and I guess it's probably about 80 to 100 yards from me, and there is a street light, and there's a creek down at the kind of at the bottom of the mountain at this section of it. And this thing, I say thing, and of course I don't know if you like it, Sasquatch Chronicles, if you've ever heard him talk about Claire, how it just glided across the beach. Uh, this thing, uh, it's like all of a sudden, it's almost like it just appeared out of nowhere and started across the road. It was kind of a just from the initial part of where I saw it start across the road. It was kind of I wouldn't say a sandy color, but it wasn't grayish. I couldn't really tell, but the way its feet moved, I mean, it was back and forth so fast, its feet, it blurred. It started to blur because, like, you see a bicycle or, one of the old cartoons, how their feet's going so fast, like Fred Flintstone or something. And, and it's like that. And it's like as it proceeded, it's like you could tell where the hair was kind of blowing back, and it looked like a cloud or a fog, little patch of fog or something. I mean, it's almost like it was just, I mean, you could have said it was a ghost or pretty much anything. But I feel that it was another Sasquatch, and because like I said, just listening to other anecdotal evidence from other podcasts and people and what they've said, it's like, okay, that's got to be a Sasquatch. It's like all this weird crap that's been going on. It's like, what else could this be? Because I mean, spirits. I've encountered spirits throughout my life, and this was not like a spirit. It was more real than just a spirit, if that makes any sense.
Well, at
Well,
this
anyway,
point, out of all the ones you've seen, have you seen enough to say yes, that's a Sasquatch, or is this all pretty much silhouettes and dark figures with eyes
no.
from too
Well,
far away? Or
okay. I could the one that was beside the road, the one that was in the pasture that looked like a tree trunk. There's nothing else it could have been. I mean, that's like you whittle it all down to what it could be. That's the only thing it could be because it was there. It was there in that spot, and nothing had ever been in that spot. And then you come back every day thereafter, and there's nothing there. I mean, that's the one I can say. Yeah, it's got to be a Sasquatch. That's all it can be. And far as the red eyes, it's like, what else can it be? I know people have said, Nephilim, demons, uh, all this other stuff. And growing up on the booger stories, it's like, okay, and listening to, all the podcasts and other eyewitness testimonies, it's like, what else could it have been? Because I mean, there was no light uh going in this thing's eyes for it to be lit up, no reflective eye shine. Uh that one, it had to be for Sasquatch or Dogman or something, but it was something along those lines of cryptid. It had to be because I mean, we don't have, you know, other exotic animals out here or something, with bioluminescing eyes. And as far as the eyes in the woods, there was no reflection. It was sitting over in the dark woods, just the eye shine, glowing eyes over there. I mean, what else? I mean, it's kind of like there's nothing else it could be. Nothing else it could be. And that thing going across the road, it's like I've never seen anything like it before or since. Uh,
yeah,
and
that one's pretty freaky.
yeah, and it's like and as fast as it was moving, and when it went across the road, it's like it disappeared. I wouldn't say disappeared like, oh, it, vanished kind of thing. It's like you hear about them dropping, and I'm thinking, well, maybe it just went over there and dropped down in the ditch on the other side of the road, which there's a lot of vegetation on that side of the road. And I'm thinking it just went over there and just dropped down in the bushes and probably watched me go by. I don't know. I didn't see it after it crossed the road. I don't know. And every time I saw these things, I kind of wondered, it's like, are they territorial? It's like, that intro to the whoops. What is that? Is that a territorial cry? Is it, get the heck off my property kind of thing? It's like, what exactly does that whoop mean? And and it makes me wonder if they're just showing me where their territory is, or they're watching me to see what I'm doing, or are they showing me who they are? Because like the initial encounter with the one with the red eyes, it's like, who are you? And maybe it was showing me who it was, and what they do. Well, anyway, after I saw that one cross the road, uh, you know, starting to get more light, the daylight savings, whatever, change of time, get, later spring. And I was going up, this is before I turned to go down the mountain. There was something, all I saw was like its back, and it was, I wouldn't say smallish, but I always guess probably maybe 4 feet tall, maybe black, and something and beside it, and it's like it was its butt, because you know how you have, deer, antelope, and how they have their color, and then around their butt there's kind of like this, you know, lighter color to it. And there was the black one, and then that one, like it was bent over and it just saw its butt, and it was like the color of dead pine needles, pine straw color, with a lighter color, off white, creamy kind of color, arch there on its butt. And I don't know what that was. I just saw it. I don't know. It could have been something weird, but it wasn't time for the deer to change color for the season, because you know how they get kind of reddish, when they get out into the summertime. Um, but I don't know. That's one of those questionable things. What was it? But it's kind of weird to see something black and something that color together. We've got turkey, we've got uh, foxes, we've got deer, coyotes, bobcats. I don't know, just a plethora of different wildlife out here. And I have where we also have there's a hunting camp, a couple of mountain hills really, uh, over from us, a hunting camp. And I have heard stories from locals that they bring in exotic animals, to hunt, do these paid hunts. So I don't know. It could be something weird from something that because I have seen a pheasant is the only relatively non-native species to the area that I've ever seen around here. Uh, but anyway,
Have
back
you
to the
heard
Sasquatch.
any vocals?
Yes, in hindsight, I think I have. It's not one of those uh, things that I can say, yeah, for sure, because we've got coyotes and dogs and all kinds of other things that this could have been. I don't know, but what I have heard, this was previous to any of the sightings, and then maybe once or twice after the sightings since. It's kind of a cross between a coyote and an old hound dog, kind of howl, howl or kind of moaning sound. I don't know really exactly how to describe it, but you know, I'm not about to make weird noises on here. This is kind of weird anyway. But it's one of those questionable things. You don't know if it's if that's what it was or if it is somebody's dog in pain or a coyote or something. You never can really tell. But I have heard tree knock since we moved out here. We moved out here in 2006, and I have heard tree knocks. Of course, we built the house ourselves. I designed it. My husband built it. And of course, out here waiting on the subcontractors, me and my 3-year-old daughter at the time, we would be out here just hanging out. And, not, you know, not one of the locals, not being one of the locals, I don't know what the normal noises are out here. But I know what, you know, chopping wood sounds like. And I had heard several times like, somebody would take 3 whacks at wood, like they're chopping with a huge axe or something, or even like people say, with a tree branch or whatever, knocking on a tree, something of that nature. But I heard that many times out here previous to the sightings and didn't think twice about it. I just thought, oh, well, somebody on the other side of the woods, they're building because somebody's always building something out here, a barn, putting in fence posts or whatever, it's just kind of like write it off. And but that's really the only vocalizations. Oh wait, well, hang on. I got to go back up here. Also, back when these things, the sightings, as far as the vocalizations, I had gone out. This is somewhere probably about after the first couple of sightings. I was going out the carport, opened the carport door, went out, and the 600-pound owl things. We have owls. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind we have owls, but not like this. I mean, these sounded much bigger. It didn't have that roll at the end that most owls have when they hoot. And there was one at the back of the house. There was one at the side on one side of the driveway, and there was one on the other side of the house on the other side of the driveway. And that's when the hair, it's one thing when you're, in the confines of your truck versus actually walking and hearing these things. It was really hard to walk for me just to walk around the back of my truck and get in my truck because I was exposed. And of course, like one thing I heard on one of Wes's podcasts is, if they were going to get you, they would have gotten you already. And as many years as we've lived out here and never had a problem, that's the only thing that kind of kept me moving. But it was, I mean, it was scary to think that there's something out there, 7.5 feet tall, burly, I mean, not really burly, but something that could just snatch you up and take off with you. And I'm exposed. It's like, please, Lord, just let me get around and get in the truck. And I mean, I don't know, not frozen, but I wanted to freeze. It's, that fight, flight, or freeze. I probably would be one of those that would just freeze and close my eyes and say, please, Lord, don't let it hurt too bad, kind of thing, if they got me. But, uh, but yeah, the hooting, I heard that before. And there was this was probably I guess probably about a year. I don't know if it was that year or if it was the year after. My husband and I got in a screaming match. Okay, I know everybody fights. It's not something I really want to advertise, but we were, I mean, really loud screams. Well, I was on my, it was before I went to work. So I went out the door, and when I opened that door, that, that 600-pound owl was out there, and it's almost like it was checking on me. And I don't want to try to say there's some sort of connection between me and these things. I don't know if it was just hanging out. I know it gets curious, they're very curious. I actually think there's some sort of ape, like we're apes, gorillas are apes kind of thing. And it was curious. It's like, what's going on? It's like, I almost I want to think that maybe it was saying, are you okay? What's going on is kind of the way I felt about it. And there have been times, it's like, I just had to go to take a walk in the woods. This is previous before I ever saw them. I had taken a walk in the woods and just had a good cry. I'm just sitting out there. Um, there's a little bank down toward the creek, and of course, lots of big trees. I was sitting under a tree and just having a good cry. And I heard two steps, like somebody out there. And I said, hello, is anybody there? And I didn't get an answer. Of course, sometimes we get poachers and folks that collect coyote skins for money or whatever around here. So I thought, well, it's like, okay. And I never did hear anything else. And said hello again. And no, I didn't hear anything. No more movement. Looked around. There was nothing. Didn't see any squirrels. And it was almost, like people talk about how the woods go silent. I don't know if the woods were silent before, after, or during. I just know that all I heard was that, and I got creeped out, and I walked back to the house.
Now,
There
do
was
you
that
ever
one.
investigate the woods around your house?
I have really bad osteoarthritis. When Johnny was out here in 2022, I had a hard time getting up and down the driveway. It's to the point now where it's like I don't get out in the woods anywhere near as much as I used to, because I grew up, my parents, our vacations would be camping. And of course my dad would hunt. I grew up on 40 acres in South Fulton County, you know, rural, all that kind of stuff.
Now,
I miss the woods.
you said that Johnny lives like as the crow flies about 10 miles away.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
And Johnny, you've been to her location, correct?
Yeah, the way her property's set up, there's not like a lot of place to, like woods and shrubs and all that good stuff for them to hide directly on her property. But she's surrounded by woods everywhere else. So,
Now,
there's
could these
no,
be the same ones that you deal with? That is it possible to get from your house to her house through nothing but forest?
oh, yeah, for sure.
So y'all could be dealing with the same individuals easily.
Yeah, I kind of joked with my kids after I quit noticing them. I kind of joked with my kids, say, "Yeah, Johnny stole my boogers,"
Yeah. There's no way to know.
Yeah,
E- all I can tell people is when the most active times of the year are around my property. And, that's when I get the most evidence. And that's usually around September, October, November. And then it stops during the wintertime. And then it starts again in spring, like it just started like a couple weeks ago here. Um, but that's the activity that I'm experiencing. The truth of the matter is, I don't know that they're not here all year round and they just decide to interact those times of the month. There's absolutely no
right.
way to know. There's no way to know if they're, I've heard of other researchers uh, that live in areas with a lot of sand or out in the desert, stuff like that, where, you can actually track footprints for miles. That's not Georgia. That's not the area we live in. There's so much leaf litter and pine straw litter that, you can find. I've found tons of impressions all over the place out here, but tracks, I've only found like 4 in 7 years. So there's no way to track them like that, So it's all just a big guess on where they're going, if they're leaving, how far they travel. All I can tell people really is what the seasons are for activity. So, but there's a good possibility. I've seen these things run on all fours, and 10 miles would be absolutely nothing. So I don't, who knows? There's no telling what they're doing.
Right. talking about the cover around here, there have been two. It's really weird. I could say it's a God thing. I don't know, but we had a huge limb. It had a hole in it, like it was like a squirrel or a woodpecker or something had eaten a hole in it. Well, this whole branch one night could have been just the storm, but came off the tree and it hit the ground. It was really weird. Didn't hit the house, and then that same tree later came down and it fell directly on the wood line. I mean, it's kind of a relatively big tree. I can't really, say Sasquatch did it, or it could have just been, like I said, just a God thing that fell on the tree line and not on the house. And then that was on the end of the house. And then in the back of the house, we had a similar thing where one of the kind of bushy maple, it had several trunks kind of coming up, small trunks coming up together. That fell over and it's directly on the wood line. And I just thought that was kind of really weird. But it would be perfect. The spot where it fell in the back is for them to kind of hang out behind it and watch TV in here in our living room with us,
Yeah.
which I've heard, something like that, uh,
Well, they don't need
and
much at all, especially at night. You've
right.
got, but for the way I remember, you kind of have like there's the yard, and then there's like I know on the back and maybe the side you've got a little bit of a wood line. Isn't that kind of how
Yeah.
it's laid out? Something like
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
definitely at night, there'd be no problem hiding out over there at
Yeah.
all.
And after that tree came down, it was really weird. And of course, all this interact, this happened in 2022, this thing I'm about to tell you. I don't know. This is completely just my kids say, "Oh, mom, you're crazy. You blame everything on, you know, Sasquatch." But there was, I've got a picture. It's kind of blurry because I took it from inside the house through the screen. But I noticed after all this had happened, there were sticks sticking straight up in the yard. And my husband's like, "Oh, that happens. That's just, sticks falling off the tree and, after a storm." But no, it's like these things, I can't remember, there's three or four of them, kind of in, I wouldn't say a circle, but just, in points close to each other. And then one night I had gone out, the dogs were barking, and I turned on the floodlight and looked off the end of the deck. And those sticks are exactly the parameter of where our floodlight is, which I thought was really weird. And then I went back and looked at the picture, and there's two, which it's not a whole lot of grass over there at that time, and it's kind of sandy. It's like it's too much sand and dirt out here. It's not really much of anything you can really get any prints in, like Johnny was saying. But uh, two little like rubbed out spots where there's no leaves, no grass or anything. It was kind of there between the wood line and these sticks right next to the house. I thought that was weird. Like I said, I can't, kids say I'm crazy and blame everything on Sasquatch. Um, and then uh, what else was there? So okay. And in between time, before I saw it, which this is another one of those things, back in 22, on the 14th of January, where I work, there's lots of cameras, lots of security, all the fences have cameras. Uh, and not before or since, none of our clients that we know of had anybody actively looking for them. Uh, but all of a sudden, I didn't see anything on cameras. Like I said, I watch cameras at night, listen to podcasts. Uh, all of a sudden, it's like the whole police department was in the parameter of the fence and flashlights shining everywhere under everything, everywhere. And I'm just like, what the, and all of a sudden the phone rings and it's 911 calling me saying, "Stay inside, keep the doors locked. There's somebody, called and reported somebody trying to, come across the fence." So I'm just like thinking back then because, my boss, everybody's pretty, in the community knows each other. And the police chief would not tell my boss, um, would not tell her what it was, who it was, reported it, any of that kind of stuff. And I keep wondering because I looked on the cameras, they went back and pulled the camera and looked back and nobody could see anything. And I still wonder if maybe one of these things had followed me to work before it actually showed itself to me. Because the area where I work, there have been, bear sightings and they've actually had pictures of black bears and they say, well, where black bears could be, these things could be, which, there's lots of woods around where I work, even though it's near a small town. And that, I just wonder about that. And, I'm going to jumping around all over the timeline. Back when my kids were in preschool, this is like years before I ever, even thought about these things being out here. Uh, I was lots of back roads. I was coming up one of the back roads and all dirt, and we just call it the bumpy road. We're not going to say the name of it, but dust and dirt and everything, woods everywhere. Beautiful place just to kind of, drive through. And there was this deer, this big buck. I don't know. It was probably an 8 pointer, 10 pointer, maybe. I mean, big. I mean, really nice rack on it. And it was laying on the side of the road, the guts piled out beside it. And I'm thinking, because I grew up, my ex-husband, my dad, I grew up, my uncle hunts. I grew up with hunters. Watch people gut deer, slaughter other animals, this kind of thing. And I'm like thinking, what kind of crazy poacher is gonna be out here gutting a deer, not have it hanging, leaving it here on the side of the road? They didn't take the rack, they didn't take the head, and it's just the whole thing there gutted with the guts laying beside it. And I just, that was just one of those things, you think, what kind of weird crap goes on out here in the country. But looking back, I'm like, crap, I wonder if we, coming up the road, wonder if we actually scared one of these things after it had just made a kill. You know, I don't know. There's other things that have happened. If I could just, just I don't. I'm trying to. Well, anyway, okay. So back to the sightings. When I finally saw one, this is in October of 22. My son's in the band here, and it was before he could drive, before he had a vehicle, and had to go down at midnight, pick him up at the school. And as I'm going down the mountain, this is the one that made me cry. It just, I mean, things get so surreal, and you have this, you're suspect of all these things, and but you have no actual, this is what it is, full on kind of view of it. Well, I was down halfway down the mountain. There's a pond kind of over on the right, and this is just past the pond on the left where it was standing. It had evidently crossed the road. Anyway, it's black as night. I mean, it's the same color as the night. It takes on whatever characteristics, colors. I mean, it was the color of night. There's no other way to describe it. But my headlights hit it plainly, and it was on its knuckles, just like a gorilla. It looked just like a gorilla. Only I don't know if you used to watch Land of the Lost, back in the 70s. I don't know how old you guys are, but the slee stack and how big their eyes were compared to their head, like dinner plate black. Well, that's the way this thing, I mean, the eyes weren't glowing, but its eyes were like as big as dinner plates. I mean, it was just like black voids on this thing. But it's clear. I mean, you could completely see it. And after I saw it, I was just like, I was in tears. I'm just like, oh my gosh, you know, and I have talked to actually talked to, I think it was Wes. One time I talked to him, just a conversation, and he said that, which I posed, that the younger ones look more like gorillas, and the older they get, they look more, like the human smushed in face kind of thing. And that's kind of what I was thinking, because this thing, if it had stood up, I would guesstimate it to maybe be 6 feet tall, if that. And it just stood there on the side of the road, on the left side of the road, and just looked at me and watched me go by. It was so weird. It's like to think that these things are out here, and I know for a fact these things are in our woods, and this is the first time I've actually seen one to know, because I know that's not a gorilla, because I mean, it couldn't be. I I don't know. I don't think we have gorillas out here. I think it's got to be Sasquatch. But that was surreal also to actually see one.
Now, where
Now,
exactly was that at?
That was like if you go down the mountain, like if you come out 2 roads over from where I live, you go down the mountain, like you're gonna go down to where, uh, anyway, I don't want to give away where I am, But anyway, that
Right.
was on the way down the mountain. It was near the pond that's kind of on the right side of the road. It was just past it, going down the mountain. But
How
yeah,
far
that
away
was
was it? You think?
from me. It was just the other side of the road. I mean, it was standing in the right of way, and it, it was standing in the right of way, and of course I was on my side of the road, so it was just the other side of the road between me and it. It was just
Well, did you feel any relief at least after having that many weird things happen and then getting a good look at it?
no. I guess I kind of felt a little more of a. I don't know. I'm not even gonna go into say a connection. It's more of an understanding within myself that these things exist, and that it's between you know the surrealism and the reality of things. It kind of that I wouldn't it wasn't relief. It was more of it justified things a little bit, if that makes any sense. Oh, and there's another one. It's like I could sit here and think of all kinds of weird things. Also, in the thing of getting to know it, and of course you guys know about the whole gifting thing, which I think Johnny, you've dealt with some of that a little bit. Um, what in between the time between me actually seeing it on the side of the road, in the first my initial sighting, there was a deer. God, it's like this. There's so many deer out here. It's not even funny. Um, on my way home one morning, there's an embankment just before you get one of the turnoff roads before you get to the road where I turn. There's a probably I guess it's probably about 20-foot embankment, maybe a little better, and it was bare at the time, except for I don't know if it was a root or a small tree limb or something. But on the side of this embankment, okay, it's just something because you see roadkill all the time and that sort of thing. But on the side of this embankment was a deer with its neck backwards over this tree limb, dead, no blood. I cannot explain it. I don't know. Draw your own conclusions, kind of thing. But I think maybe it was trying to gift me, get to know it, because it goes back to my initial sighting. It's like, who are you? And maybe I don't know. Maybe they feel some connection to human beings, and of course, I know, which I made the comment on one of my other interviews with Brian. That we put ourselves in a zoo. It's like we're in a house, we're in the middle of the woods, and because it's so beautiful out here, we don't have on our sliding deck doors and our kitchen windows and things in here, and even our dining room, we don't have curtains. It's like the woods themselves are beautiful, and there's nobody else out here to see us. And these things, there's no telling how long they have been watching us, sitting out there watching TV with us, or just watching us come and go. And my daughter also kind of comes back. She's in the kitchen. I see her, but uh, shortly after I'd had my initial sightings, she was one Saturday, she was leaving, and she said that she heard something, and of course, go over the audio things of different animals on the internet. And she said it didn't really sound like anything. She said it sounded kind of like a fox, but it didn't sound exactly like a fox. So I don't know if that could have been what it is, or if maybe it was one of these things. And I've heard things. I don't know. My head, like I said, I have issues with spirits, and people get into the woo kind of thing. But my husband was actually here uh, one morning. He was working from home, and we heard this door. It sounded just like our bathroom door in our laundry room closing, but there was nobody else in the house. The laundry room door was not closing, and I hear weird noises around here all the time that cannot be justified, rectified, or anything else. And I don't know. I've heard things that will like hit the window, which I know some of them have been birds hit the window. There have been pine cones tossed on the deck. Of course, I know squirrels will grab something to eat, maybe come up and eat on the deck or whatever. But just kind of little weird, odd stuff that you can't really assign to anything else. Uh, so I don't know. Uh, it's
Well,
weird. It's
Flatrock was asking, do you have other pets that you're leaving feed out for? Like if you have dogs or cats, you leave food outside for them.
Yeah, we have at the time we had two dogs. We just have one dog now. But yeah, we leave food out for them. We feed them every morning. So, but other than that, there's nothing out at night for them.
Do the dogs alert or react to any activity?
Well, see, that's kind of thing. We don't know what they alert to because, we've caught them barking at deer. We've caught them barking at armadillos, possums,
Right.
all sorts of things. So, we don't know what they're barking at. You know, and we've gone to look, and of course, you never really see anything, but I have seen deer because I don't know if you guys hunt, if you guys want to come out here and hunt on the back of our property. This one deer, oh my gosh, I'd never seen, I don't know, it might be a little bit of an exaggeration. It might have been a 16 pointer. I mean, the thing was, I'd never seen a deer this big in my life. I mean,
I know
the
where Johnny's
mus
going.
this
Yeah.
muscular, I mean, it was so muscular and wide. I mean, it had to have been an old buck, but it had rubbed its antlers on a tree out beside our driveway. I had seen it cross a couple of times on my way to work, and to where it had just knocked this tree over. It's just rubbed the bark off of it, and finally the tree just fell over.
Now,
Crazy.
do you talk to your neighbors? Anybody that lives in the area, have they had any strange activity or anything like that, or seen anything?
Yeah, I actually, have neighbor pages on Facebook and this and that, and I actually put some things out there, kind of asking, if anybody's seen anything weird. And actually, one of the neighbors was coming by as I was getting the mail, and he stopped, and I was talking to him, and just, of course, have this. Anyway, on the back, I have identifying things that on my truck that I believe in Sasquatch. Uh, anyway, and I got talking to him. I said, "Can I just ask you a weird question?" I said, have you seen any, Bigfoot or anything out here like that or whatever?" And he laughed and he said, "Oh yeah," he said back before we moved out here, on the property we used to hunt, and he said it was in wintertime. He said there was snow on the ground. He said he was hunting and he was sitting there in his tree stand, and he watched this thing try to go down an embankment. Said it slipped and said it slid down the hill, and after it did, it turned up and it looked directly at him. He said he laughed at it. There's that,
Huh.
my friend that I made through Girl Scouts, back when I was leading that, her mother, I got to talking to her about it, my friend, and she said, "Oh yeah," she said, "My mother, yeah, she's seen them." She said back, and I guess it was, I don't know, 1976, or I don't know, somewhere the mid late 70s. Uh, she said, and I talked to her mom about it, and her mom said, she said, yeah, her and a bunch of the neighborhood kids were out playing. You know, it's almost like the area where it is almost like a mill village kind of thing. And said, yeah, we were all out playing in the yard, and, cowboys and Indians and all this kind of, whatever they were playing, screaming and hollering and laughing. And she said, one of those things, she said, it stepped out of the woods looking straight at them. And she said, everybody screamed and ran off. And I got to talking to her further, and she said, which she lives, let me see, gonna go, she probably lives about 15 minutes from where I am, I guess. But anyway, she said she remembers when she was younger, she'd ride, horses, ponies, and she would hear vocalizations. And she said there was something that was up in a tree. I don't remember if she said it had wings, or I can't remember exactly what she had said, but she said, I want to say she said something about one being up in a tree, something being up in a tree. So yeah, I mean, she would probably be a good interview if I could, I don't know, get her to come on. But it, yeah, there's people out here, and one there's north of north of here, there's a going up toward, I can't say it, but anyway, there's wildlife management area, another one of them, and the road that runs just north of this wildlife management area, it's nicknamed Booger Road. Is what they call it. They don't, because there's so many sightings that have happened over there through the years, and of course, here in the county, there's there's Booger Hollow Road, all that kind of stuff just around here. And it's nothing. When I, like, back to my friend, she's like, "Oh yeah," she said, "I heard there was one living up on, the mountain, kind of here close to where we live." And I'm like, "Wow, okay." And I never knew this, and people have known about these things for years around here. It's been
Yeah, this is a happening
interesting.
spot.
Yeah, it is. Well, see, there's lots of caves around here too, which I think is pretty interesting. And I mean, say mountains, but it's like there's, the foothills of the Appalachians around here. Little
Right.
ridges and things. But yeah, I mean, even on my route to work, where I was talking about that pond, there's a huge outcrop of this big, huge rock, and every time I pass it, I can just imagine one of these things getting down and crawling under this rock, and there's probably a cave back under this rock. I think, and my thing is, I think they live underground. I do, because I've heard stories about you know finding them. I think there's a story in Florida about somebody said, with the alligator pool or something, and these kids went and where the alligators had dug up under the bank or whatever the swampy area is, and one of the kids said that he had found, what he believed to be one of the layers of one of the Sasquatch. And you've heard, I've heard other stories about caves, and so that's just my thing. I think that's where they hide more than anything else.
There's a good
Cave,
possibility.
yeah, but yeah. That's right offhand. I can't really think of anything else. I'm sure after I get
Well,
done
that's
here.
that is plenty. You've had quite a ride out there near
Yeah,
your house.
it's been fun. It's like I always loved wildlife anyway, and there was, as far as vocalizations, let's get back to my childhood. The only time I ever heard anything scary out there where I lived was, I don't know if it's a bobcat or it could have been one of these things. There was a creek. Like I said, I grew up in the woods. Every time I've lived anywhere, I've it's been the woods. Uh, I heard something. It sounded like a woman screaming, and I don't know what that was, but that was the only thing from my childhood that I heard. But I have, in the woo lights, orbs, things. I've never really seen anything I could say is an orb, but I remember as a child seeing what might have been flashlights in the woods. Like I said, we're in the middle of 40 acres, and of course on the other side of the acreage, there's other houses. It was kind of rural, but other houses where teenagers lived, and they could have been in the woods or whatever. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I love the woods.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a bunch of different upsides for living out. You've got your privacy and nature and everything else, and then you got
Yeah.
Sasquatch. So that's always a
Yeah. Yeah. And
upside
see,
for
and it
me.
right. It's like, and I laugh. It's like when I talk to some people and they're just like, yeah, right, Sasquatch. And I'm just like, yeah, you go right ahead and laugh. I know something you don't. And
Right.
two, and I mentioned it to my boss, which my boss is actually she grew up part of the tribe that's out here in our area. Her grandparents or so, I can't remember. But anyway, she grew up going to some of these I don't want to call them powwows. I'm not even sure what you call them, but going out to some of these and listening to some of the elders tell stories about Sasquatch. And she said they were some pretty scary stories that they would tell. So yeah, it's like those of us who know, hey, we got a leg up on everybody else.
Oh yeah. Well, Joy, we really enjoyed having you on, and thank
Well,
you for
thank
coming
you.
back and telling your story. And Richard, you guys, any questions?
No, no, it was. I asked what I could ask when I got in there. I got everything asked. But if there's anybody in the chat room that has a question for Joy, now would be the time to throw it out there. But yeah, that's interesting, Joy. Like I said, I would definitely be in contact with anybody that's a neighbor that lives in that area, and kind of just you know chat back and forth to see if they're experiencing the same things and stuff like that. And you could
Yeah,
start keeping a journal and giving the dates and times of when you're
oh
having these things happen, so that can create a timeline for you that you can go back and look at and say, well, this time of the year last year it was really active, and that's coming up soon. So you know what I
yeah.
mean. You might see
And
them again. And
actually, that reminded me, after these initial sightings that I had before I actually had, the head-on sighting, I contacted the BFRO, and I met with a gentleman. And of course, he said he couldn't really report it because I didn't, there was not enough evidence to report it. They're class A and B and whatever other sightings. But, he made some suggestions, and that was one of the things he said, kind of keep a journal, a timeline of, what's going on. And I started that, and it's like, it just got to be the point where I'm just like, okay, I'm just not going to bother with this. This is just, there's no point. And even after I saw the head on, blatant, outright, uh, saw the thing, I didn't contact the BFRO again. I'm just like, on the BFRO, I'm sorry, but yeah,
But you
it's
can
kind of
you
like
can also inexpensively purchase a digital recorder that you can turn on at night, leave it on your porch or whatever, and then check it
yeah,
out the next day to see if you get any audio and stuff like that. There's some fun things you can do without, because you said you couldn't go hiking, but you can do
yeah,
your own little thing right there at the house.
yeah,
Flat Rock, same thing. He don't got to go far, and he's always trying to catch evidence. So he's kind of like your situation. He doesn't go out in the woods. He's doesn't move as quickly as he did. You know.
right, yeah. Okay,
Well,
cool.
awesome, Joy. Thank you very much again, and we will definitely keep in touch and
All right.
keep an eye out for that big old deer.
Yes.
Maybe I'll drop by and see you this hunting season.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, if you want to come out here and hunt on the back, my uncle used to put corn out, and that was something else. I always go back. I don't know if you guys have time, but when he was hunting out here, he passed here last year. But when he was hunting out here, he put a salt lick out here, and he said he had never seen a salt lick disappear so fast. And it kind of makes me wonder, was it the deer or was it something else out here? Getting the corn and the salt lick. So, but yeah, they've got
Yeah.
him and my cousin got several out here. So yeah, but seriously, you're more than welcome to come out here and hunt because nobody's hunting it right now.
Well, thank you. We'll see.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
All
All
right, Joy.
right.
It was good meeting you.
You too, Richard.
You
Have a
know,
And
good
hopefully
night.
and
you guys can hear okay. I've had a thunderstorm like right over my head this entire time. So,
Yeah, I
but
saw the lightning
considering how
hit
we
it too.
started, I think everything went pretty good.
yeah, I
I
mean,
think
I thought
so.
I had everything together. As far as I'm concerned,
It's
I
all
do have
good.
everything together. I'm just going by you guys telling me there was a problem, so I got to go by what y'all tell me. I don't know what I did.
Yeah,
I just
whatever it was,
went in and out of things. I didn't really change anything or nothing.
whatever it was, you fixed it.
So
All right, folks. Well, I gotta get in bed. My off days have changed now, but we will see everybody on the next episode. Who we got coming up next, Richard?
we've got yeah. Let's let everybody know what's going on here. Let me get the calendar out. Okay, so the next show will be May 9th, and that's Brian Darcy. Um, really great guy. If you go back to some old videos on my channel, he's camped out with me. He's been in the woods with me a few times. He's a great guy. He's also a minister. Um, you know, you got to meet him, Johnny, when we were at the conference. Really
Yeah,
large man. Brian's a big man. Um,
yeah, yeah.
then we've got Scott Post on the 23rd. Um, Troy Palmer's coming up on June 6th. And then John Stewart on the 27th. And then we're wide open after that.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're
All right. Well,
of the week. So anybody out there that says, "Hey, I got a store for you," we can fit you in because we do this every other week. So
yeah. All right, folks. Y'all have a good one, and I am out of here. Joy, thanks again, Richard. Good talking to you, buddy.
You're welcome.
yeah, man.
Yep. All right.
And
Good
we
night,
will see
guys.
y'all next time.
All right.
All right, Joy. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Good night.
All right, guys. So great show. What a wonderful lady. Remember to check us out. You can go to Johnny's research page, which is Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. You can go to my research page, which is BFFG Bigfoot Research. But you can always see us here on Sasquatch Unredacted. Love you guys, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care, guys. Have a wonderful weekend.